Let's face it, liberals are offended by everything.
Right on.
And they have zero sense of humor.
Right on.
Huh?
Right on. It's the party game that pokes fun at political correctness and liberalism run amok.
But making fun of them is hilarious for the rest of us.
So play right on and mock the progressive left and their fake news media counterparts in a variety of categories, such as race hustle, the wussification of America, earth snobs, Islam abomination, Hollywood hypocrites, and campus coddling. Feminism follies and rainbow games, and don't forget, millennial entitlement and many others.
Right on, created by conservatives for conservatives.
Because mocking the left feels so right on.
Give the gift of all year long by going to RightOnGame.com.
That's RightOnGame.com. Use promo code MOJO50 for a 10% discount. That's RightOnGame.com, promo code MOJO50 for 10% off.
And while you're there, check out the new drinking game option.
Warning, microaggressions contained in this box. Millennials and snowflakes will be offended by its contents. Retreating to safe spaces are highly recommended.
RightOnGame.com, promo code MOJO50 for 10% off. RightOnGame.com.
You can't handle the truth.
The Denise Simon Experience. The Truth Matrix. Vetting, exposing, drilling down to the truth.
Rolling Thunder, this is Hitman. Seattle. Hitman, this is Rolling Thunder. Seattle.
The Denise Simon Experience. Exposing politics, lies, demagoguery, spin, fraud.
Grid to suppress. Mike Charlie, 4-3-5-9er-2-1. Grid to mark. Mike Charlie, 4-7-3-9er, 8-9er, out.
Promoting individual situational awareness. Question, probe, notice, ask why.
Mark smoke on the deck. 2 rounds AGPT. Gas TOT 5-3.
And now, the Denise Simon Experience.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on the Denise Simon Experience. Border wall, immigration, guess who I call on? Rachel Bovard. She's my go-to person, running up and down the hill. Thank you, Rachel, for being with us on the Denise Simon Experience.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Here's the deal. Has there been a single legitimate proposal that has been put on a table by the Democrats?
Not really. They have been proposing things that are sort of drastically far apart from what not just President Trump, but congressional Republicans say they will support. So we haven't really seen any serious efforts from Democrats to address this issue. Obviously, there's 17 members of Congress in a conference committee right now trying to work out a compromise before government funding runs out again on February 15th. But they haven't made much progress according to reports. So it's possible we could again see a government shutdown unless they can give something to Trump that he will sign.
Here's kind of my thought. I would take whatever the Democrats offer with a stipulation. So we can kind of get on with the thing, because that I would show that Trump is doing everything that he can to fulfill his duty as president and oath, of which Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer take the same one, and they're not doing any of that. Is that right?
Yeah, Democrats have always had sort of interesting positions on border security. However, they've always had a conservative wing of their party on this issue. Even Chuck Schumer previously was very conservative on this issue. You saw him vote for a border wall. He proposed eliminating the diversity visa lottery several years ago. But they have succumbed to this very liberal wing of their party that basically will not be satisfied with any border enforcement and prefers open borders to anything that Trump or Republicans might propose. So they are sort of slowly being taken over by this very, very liberal wing of their party, and this is the result.
I'm hoping that Trump can impart how demoralizing all of this is to Customs and Border Patrol and ICE and generally law enforcement. It's got to be really demoralizing that the Democratic Party is not extending them any kind of an olive branch at all, are they?
No, you've seen Republicans sort of come to the center a little bit. You've seen Trump say, hey, I'll even, legalize DACA recipients. I'll do all these things for you if you just give me money for a border wall. And the president and the congressional Democrats have said not one single dollar. Not one single dollar will go toward any of anything Trump wants. Trump derangement syndrome on this issue is real. I think you're seeing Democrats really respond to it rather than negotiate in good faith. They really just dislike Trump so much that they are willing to tank these negotiations, I think, rather than give him an inch on anything.
All right, let me ask a question way out of far afield here. Has this White House looked at all of immigration and looked at even when, 3 or 4 years ago now, maybe 4 or 5, when the Senate Gang of 8 thing did their immigration reform bill? Has this White House, do you know, or the Freedom Caucus or any of the Republicans revisited any of that so those piece parts can be put back on the table so Trump can actually take this further than just a border wall to more things to begin to tighten up what is already law on the books?
I do think that, other substantive reforms are on the table. I wrote about 3 of them recently, and I think that they are currently under discussion right now. And the first is obviously fixing family separation at the border. This is done by law. The Trump administration has taken a ton of heat for enforcing the law at the border, but it's increasingly so. They are forced to separate children from their families because existing federal law states that children cannot be detained for over 20 days. The problem comes when their parents come and claim asylum. That takes longer than 20 days to process. So that's why you're seeing family separation at the border. Republicans have been trying to fix this problem with multiple pieces of legislation, particularly in the Senate. Democrats keep blocking them. And I think if this is a serious effort, you'll see that fixed in this conference committee. In addition, I think there's a lot of proponents for tightening up our asylum security laws. Mm-hmm. There's a big loophole in place right now that allows people to claim "quote unquote" credible fear, and the interpretation of that is so lenient that it's under the president or under the Obama administration, people claiming that credible fear actually octupled, and because the interpretation has become so lenient. And then finally, I do think that there is some discussion of implementing a merit-based immigration system. You saw this last year when the House considered a bill on immigration reform. It made green cards merit-based. Essentially, if you had high-quality education, if you could speak English, if you had vocational training, all these different things, if you garnered enough points, your green card was expedited. And that's sort of the first step toward making our immigration system merit-based instead of family-based. And I think there's some emphasis in that direction. Now, whether or not Democrats agree to all of this remains to be seen. But these are the things that Republicans are starting to talk about on Capitol Hill.
Okay, well, we obviously have a hole in the dam that these people keep coming through. And they're being driven there in buses and caravans and trains and trucks and all these other kinds of things. But what's still at issue, Rachel, is Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, and China. Now, irrespective of China, because obviously we're in all those kinds of weird discussions, but has the Trump administration or has anybody suggested to this Trump White House that I don't think we have an ambassador to Honduras right now. But have we gone to any corporations and said, hey, let's go to El Salvador because they got a brand new president. One that's a little on the questionable side, but nonetheless, certainly better than the one that was there. And said, let's go into El Salvador and create a safe zone and put some business in there because there's a labor drain that's happening here. If we take these people at their word that they want a job and they want a better life, then we need to put the magnet back in their home country. Is that too far afield? Am I overthinking all of this?
I think it's, something on the table, especially when we look at these caravans. The United States gives so much in foreign aid to these countries to try and help them become, remain safe and attractive places for people to stay instead of migrating north. But, thus far, you haven't seen too much in way of that, except you are starting to see it in Venezuela, where the so-called socialist paradise of Venezuela, where people are starving and children are malnourished. You're starting to see the United States put foreign aid into that country, essentially to sort of destabilize the socialist regime to help people, who want to reform that system. So that's only the only place in South America, I think, that's getting a ton of attention. But I've heard it discussed before that the U.S. should, intervene monetarily in some of these countries and help them become more stable, stabilized for people to live. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if we don't fix that, we're going to have a caravan for the next 20 years.
Yeah, I think it's important to note, though, that it's not as though these countries have become suddenly more unsafe than they already were. These countries have been unsafe for a long time.
Yeah.
I think when we speak about the caravan issue, there is a lot of organization going on with leftist groups and these caravans, and that's, I think, what's stimulating a lot of these, constant cycles of caravans. They don't happen spontaneously. They are getting money, they are getting resources, they are getting organization from a lot of these left-wing activist groups.
And so these organizations, I've looked at a few of them. They look domestic. Do they have some kind of an IRS status, a nonprofit status that can be revoked?
When I looked into this, the last caravan was forming several months ago, some of these groups were based out of Chicago,
right.
And they do have nonprofit status there. I don't know what the status of their C3, with the federal government is, but it's a pretty serious mission creep to go into another country and sort of organize them to come break your own country's laws.
So I'm thinking Logan Act.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I have to be honest. I'm not totally sure what the laws and regulations are about that, but it is a little bit far afield for most ordinary nonprofits.
Well, if we don't stabilize something, and maybe we're using Venezuela as a model right now because of Maduro, if we don't stabilize something, then we're going to keep having these caravans, and we're going to have to keep 5,000 uniformed personnel from the Pentagon under the Pentagon's management with DHS at this border. I mean, I don't see any significant things on the horizon that would change that model, that whole paradigm. Do you?
No, I think right now we're stuck in this place because Congress has failed to act for so long.
Stuck is right.
The president is going to have to keep relying on the military, and that's not a position that's ideal. That's not a position you want to stay in. But until Congress acts and gets its job done, that's the position the president's in.
I don't see it happening. I think that, that Trump can, offer Pelosi and Schumer every kind of rose, every kind of flower, every kind of carrot there is out there, and they've dug in their heels. So something just tells me that when we get up to the elections in 2020, we're going to be having this same discussion unless he declares a state of emergency. And I don't see that as a solution either, certainly for the long term. Do you?
Yeah, I don't think it's been the president's first choice. I think he's made that pretty clear. His first choice is for Congress to actually, appropriate the money for him to do this. However, he has said he believes he has the authority, to declare a national emergency to access these funds. And in fact, Congress has passed 136 laws giving the president this authority. So whether or not he has the authority, I think, is not in question. He definitely does. However, I think he'd prefer, obviously, that Congress provide a direct appropriation for him to do this. He's given them a million chances. He shut down the government over it to try and get them to pay attention. He reopened the government because congressional Democrats said, hey, we're not going to negotiate as long as the government is closed. So he said, fine, let's open it. Let's negotiate now. So if they fail again after time after time, I think, I sense President Trump feels he has no other option if he wants the border secured than to do it via a national emergency.
And so has there been any discussion for the Trump administration to get really creative, and that is to suspend all funding for Planned Parenthood until they come to the table? You see what I'm saying? Let's bring some of their social justice component in here and really shock the Democrats. Would that be even a reason?
It's interesting because
I'm a desperate woman.
On the pro-life side, you've seen very little action from congressional Republicans, especially when they had 2 years of majorities in both chambers. They still did not engage on the pro-life issue, I think, to the disappointment of many conservatives. Trump, on the other hand, has taken steps from the administration side. He has cut Title X funding from the executive side to Planned Parenthood. He has taken some significant steps, but those have not been reflected in Congress. And I do know that there is a push now after the despicable comments by the governor of Virginia, Ralph Northam, about that were infanticide, about killing babies after birth. I expect President Trump to address that tonight in the State of the Union.
Well, those things that are near and dear to the Democrats, the money that goes to sanctuary cities, the reassignment of all the TSA fees that are not going to TSA anymore. Under the Obama administration, there were regulation after regulation after regulation that came out at the agency level. And I don't want Trump to start putting in a whole bunch of regulations. But I would say maybe he ought to start weaponizing some of those regulations to the things that are so near and dear to these social justice warriors.
Yeah, I think it's a strategy worth pursuing, but I think it goes back to this idea that Congress has just really been doing very little in the last 2 years of their unified majority. And I think it's to the disappointment of President Trump, but also to the disappointment of a lot of conservatives that were waiting for this opportunity for years.
Has, say, the Freedom Caucus or any of those in the Senate side, have they put something on the table that actually spells out where they want to be as a starting point? We know that Lindsey Graham seems to be very, very involved in this thing, but, is there anything on paper that you've heard that they're, writing it down on one side of the table and passing it over to the other side of the table and say, check mark where a starting point is? Just not seeing the nuts and bolts of this.
I think the Freedom Caucus has been pretty clear that whatever proposal comes out of this conference committee, it has to fund the wall. They have been very clear about that. They have taken to the House floor to make that point. But I don't think that the conference committee, unfortunately, is headed in that direction. The Freedom Caucus has been very clear about border security and what they expect. Jim Jordan was on the Sunday shows this past weekend making that argument. So, there are proposals that have been outlined. Unfortunately, the Democrats refuse to engage. And I think both sides remain pretty far apart.
Indeed, they are. Are any Democrats cracking under this pressure?
They don't appear to be. Nancy
Pelosi wrong answer.
She has kept her conference pretty unified. But I will say they have not been fully pressured. Keep in mind that when the government was shut down, that would have been a perfect time to force Democrats to vote on immigration proposal after immigration proposal. For instance, to defund sanctuary cities, to pass Kate's Law, to fund the border wall. But unfortunately, you saw the Senate in particular, Mitch McConnell moved the Senate onto something completely different. Instead, they debated Middle East security. That would have been a perfect opportunity to engage Democrats, because the way to make this hard on Democrats is to force them to vote on it again and again and again. But congressional Republican leadership in the House and the Senate has not shown that inclination. And I think they're missing a key strategic opportunity to put Democrats on the defensive.
What about the border governors? I haven't seen a lot of them necessarily speak out. I mean, we've certainly seen Texas, but I haven't seen too much out of, we're not going to get anything out of California, but we haven't seen too much out of New Mexico, Arizona, even Florida here. I mean, we've got a new governor, but I would think at some point there would be some real pressure from some of these governors too, wouldn't you? I mean, look at the money that Texas spends augmenting Border Patrol. You know what I mean? I mean, it's outrageous. Billions.
Yeah, it's interesting. There is an argument to be made that the states should begin declaring national emergencies.
Yeah.
To build sections of their own wall. But that has not yet been something, that needs to bubble up from the states, and I haven't seen any state really trending in that direction yet.
I haven't either. And what's to keep them from taking some of their own state funds and saying, this is what we're going to do? I mean, it's almost revenue generating. You build piece parts of the wall to, say, the Rio Grande Valley, and it becomes revenue generating because you don't have to have as many Texas Rangers or law enforcement or border patrol there. You can kind of funnel them to the other places that are more feeble as far as stability goes, right?
Yeah, that's an argument I think many people have made, but it just hasn't resonated yet at the state level. But I think should Congress continue to fail on this issue, I think you may see more engagement from the states, kind of as you suggest.
The asylum laws that we have, does the asylum laws that we have on the books, whatever they are, I haven't looked at them, is that coming from the Geneva Convention?
Yes and no. So our asylum laws are definitely written, by us. I think you may be referring to the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, and for a lot of countries, it means that should people come here, they have a special category of asylum they can claim to stay. Now, the difference is in Mexico. We return people immediately to Mexico if they come here illegally under the TVPA. They have a special carve-out. There are many in Congress who claim that that numerous other countries should be treated the same way, that we should return people immediately, instead of sort of keeping them, releasing them into the interior of the country pending sort of court action. And so that may be a reform that is under discussion as well.
Way too many moving parts to all of this, isn't there, Rachel?
It is not an uncomplicated thing.
I mean, we've obviously got an immediate panic that's going on at this border, but then it comes to judges, it comes to courtrooms, it comes to, the Ninth Circuit, suing for this and executive orders for that and regulations for here. I don't know. I would say, I don't know what to say. I mean, I really don't know what to say. Do we take some of the foreign aid and just go, we're suspending the foreign aid because we're going to go put it into the judges?
I'm sure that we'll see a proposal like that. That's something Senator Rand Paul has tried to do in various areas, is to remove funding from foreign aid and put it to different areas. So it's possible that we could do that. However, I don't think Democrats would go for it.
No.
But again, this is a pretty basic function of the federal government, is to secure the border. So I think there's an argument to be made that this is a priority of funding. It takes priority over many other areas that the government funds. And I think you'll start to see people make that argument.
I have $1 on the table that you and I, 6 weeks from now, are going to be having the same discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause to Rachel Bovard, who is so gracious to come on here and at least try and make me feel somewhat better. There's more coming your way, so stay with us.
This is Don Newen with Cowboy Logic Radio, and I carry my Sig Sauer 9mm every day. It's like a MasterCard. I never leave home without it.
And I'm glad you do, given that you work in Atlanta every day, talking about a rough place to work.
Well, Donna, I would say that most of our beloved Cowboy Logic Radio listeners not only own, but carry their weapons too. It's just the thing to do nowadays.
So do I, Don. And we need to share with our listeners a fantastic weapons company, Tar River Arms. Oh, and I should mention, they were founded by United States Marine, enough said, right? Badass-o-matic.
TarRiverArms.com. That's TAR Riverarms.com.
Tar River Arms, America's first virtual gun store, makes it easier and more comfortable than ever to purchase your firearm online. And through 3D interactive experiences, you can even view and inspect that gun you're purchasing.
They even have weekly specials that eliminate shipping and broker fees, Donna. Great guns, great prices, and great service. And remember, Tar River Arms is veteran-owned and operated.
Don, would you expect anything less from a Marine?
No, ma'am.
At TarRiverArms.com, you can search by caliber, manufacturer, and firearm types. Revolvers, semi-automatic pistols, including your SIG, Don, short-barrel rifles, long rifles, shotguns, and NFA silencers. They even have very hard-to-find products such as the H&K MP5. Totally badass.
Tar River Arms have some of the coolest high-end tactical weapons made, all at great prices.
TarRiverArms.com, U.S. Marine owned and operated.
Hoorah!
Hey, gang, did you know that the big cellular companies fund liberal causes and candidates, not Patriot Mobile?
You're correct, Donna. Did you know that the big mobile companies have spent over $100 million to elect liberal candidates? They also fund liberal causes, agendas, and organizations such as Planned Parenthood, not Patriot Mobile.
Here's how it works. You, our beloved Cowboy Logic Radio listeners, pay your cell phone bill every month. Then Big Mobile takes your money and gives millions to liberal candidates who authorize subsidies to provide free cell service, Obama phones, to do-nothings who vote for more liberals so they can keep getting more free stuff that you pay for. Not Patriot Mobile.
So here's how you fight back. Switch to Patriot Mobile with unlimited plans starting as low as $20 a month and stop funding the big cellular companies.
Feel good about funding the right agendas. Every dollar you spend makes a statement. What message are you sending?
And it's easy to switch. You can even keep your same number, and they've got great nationwide coverage that includes Double D Ranch.
Visit them online at patriotmobile.com or call them at 1-800-A-PATRIOT.
And for any of the guilt-ridden liberals, that's 1-800-272-8746.
Created by conservatives for conservatives. Their name says it all. Patriot Mobile. Do it now. patriotmobile.com or 1-800-A-PATRIOT.
Ladies and gentlemen, what message are you sending?
Ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us on the Denise Simon Experience. For a fleeting moment in the State of the Union, President Trump mentioned school choice, and I was very happy to hear it. I think he needed to go a little bit further on it. So as a consequence, I get the fun email from USPIE, U.S. Parents Involved in Education. So as a consequence, I tapped him on the shoulder. And Sheri fused with us, and she was kind enough to jump in here and kind of hold our hands on this one. You know, every day that goes by, we're cheating our children. So, Sheri, welcome to the Denise Simon Experience.
Thank you, Denise. I appreciate you having us on and giving us the opportunity to talk a little more about this issue.
You know, Trump brought up school choice way back in, I think, July or August of 2016. It's kind of been a issue that kind of got pushed to the side, I guess, for many obvious reasons, but I was absolutely delighted that he gave it a mention in the State of the Union. Were you as happy about that as I was?
Well, we actually anticipated it. And we're not as excited as you are, unfortunately. And I'll tell you why. And I have to tell you, too, that I come from a background, you know, in the Republican Party. I ran for public office. And, you know, for 15 years, I'd been a school choice proponent. And I understood it was the solution. It was the obvious solution because the liberals hate it so badly. It had to be the right answer. So I was convinced over the last few years from my colleagues around the country, other presidents of chapters of parents involved in education around the country, that school choice wasn't necessarily the panacea we had always thought it was. And, you know, our organization, our primary goal is to end the U.S. Department of Education, all federal education mandates, returning local control to communities and parents. So just out of the gate, we have to say, you know, any federal form of school choice we would not support. You know, we're trying to end the federal intrusion in public education, and this would only increase it. So, you know, that's how we feel about the president's mention and DeVos's mention. There's even a bill out there, I understand, that Senator Cruz has been promoting. And we just do not support in any way increasing federal involvement in education.
Well, I hear your point, but is it a step in some direction that there is at least a mention of education in the State of the Union?
Well, it should have been talked about a little more broadly. It was
I agree.
Totally a fleeting statement. And, it's unfortunate that conservatives and, even especially on the libertarian side of conservatives, they're so focused on the economy and the economic side of things. And they don't understand, that education is clearly linked to the economy. The corporate world certainly has figured that out since they've been kind of calling the shots, them and the government together, trying to control the future jobs for American children. But conservatives and Republicans need to recognize that what's happening in government schools today is an intentional takeover of our country from within the minds of our children. There's an intentional liberal indoctrination, and children are coming out socialist and even favorable towards communism.
Yes.
And it's a very scary thing to see happening. And that's why conservatives and Republicans and the president in particular needs to see this as a national security threat, because they are trying to implode our government from within.
I was going to say enemies within. Sheri, does it also necessarily involve infrastructure? Because we got a lot of schools that structurally are failing too, right?
Well, I live in South. Yeah, I live in South Carolina, so we hear about that a lot in my state. There's this area in our state called the Corridor of Shame. You may have heard of it. It's along the I-95 corridor, where there's a lot of really poor rural communities. And so, the push has been in our state for decades, to find some way of equitably funding, infrastructure for schools. But, I've also seen some very good studies that have proven that brick and mortar does not make for a good education. It doesn't matter how fancy your school building is. It depends on what you're teaching your children and who's teaching it.
I haven't seen a lot of push in a lot of these blighted areas by the Department of Education to address what's happening there. So you have a domino effect with school choice, with technology and all these other kinds of things. I haven't seen a lot of movement in the Department of Education. I really thought that Betsy DeVos would kind of come out swinging, and I've really been disappointed. Have you?
Oh, yes. We've been very disappointed. We were one of the few education conservative groups around, national groups in the country that didn't come out bashing her when she was nominated. We knew her background with Common Core, and that did concern us. We knew that she'd been a big school choice advocate, but we gave her the benefit of the doubt, and we even wrote to her. We tried to meet with her, and told her we would like to work with her and help her forge solutions. Unfortunately, we were unable to meet with her. We went to Washington, D.C., our leadership team, and met with lots of legislators and think tanks, but she was not willing to meet with us, not even her staff, which was very sad. So yes, we've been real disappointed. And the school choice issue is as I began talking about earlier, is not the solution to the problems in public schools. And the reason I say that is, regardless of where the government money goes, whether it's funneled to a private school or homeschool parents take it, there's going to be mandates passed, and especially in the private schools, they're going to be required to take the standardized tests. And we know the tests are linked to the curriculum. It's what drives the curriculum, and it's Common Core. So if you're talking about school choice, it's not really school choice at all. It's you choose which Common Core school your child's going to attend. So we like to flip the issue and get people starting to think about parental choice instead of school choice. I mean, that's the true solution. That's really what needs to happen, is parents need to be empowered to choose what's in the best interest of their children when it comes to education. And communities are very capable of working together and deciding what curriculum is best for their students without the state and especially the federal government putting mandates on them and controlling what's being taught to children.
There was a 10-year-old girl that was there as a guest of Melania Trump by the name of Grace, who hopefully, that we get it right, that has beaten brain cancer. And she was on Fox and Friends the following morning from the State of the Union. And I found, when they were asking little Grace some questions, I found her to be educationally much more advanced for a 10-year-old than a normal 10-year-old, which says to me that during her time of her brain cancer treatment that she was not in really a public education system. Now, I may be assuming some things here, but it almost is as if she was, her education was certainly augmented by parents or other types of educational tutors and that kind of thing, which put her ahead of a normal 10-year-old. Did you happen to see any of that, Sheri?
I'm afraid I did not see that interview. I wish I had, but I wouldn't be surprised. I was very impressed with her story. It's very compelling. But it doesn't take government trained individuals to produce a good education.
Mm-hmm.
Parents are very capable of rearing their children and educating them without government involvement. And, there's a wonderful resource out there by Sam Sorbo. It's a book that's called, it's going to escape me. I'll look it up while we're talking so your listeners can get a hold of it. But Sam talks about it. It's her own experience when she was a doubter about homeschooling, that she was capable of homeschooling her children. And she moved from that to realizing that she was very capable. And not only she, but every parent is very capable of educating their own children. It doesn't take college degrees. And there are great resources out there now for parents that can work together in co-op organizations in the homeschool movement. And right now, we don't recommend any parent put their children in government schools. Homeschooling is really the only safe option for children today.
Is his book, They're Your Kids?
Yes, that's her book. An excellent book. It's a short, easy read, and every parent needs to read it.
When's the last time there was any kind of a hearing? I know that education is tied to the Labor Department too, as far as committees go. When's the last time there was any hearing on the Hill that had any substance to it? Do you remember?
Well, you remember a few months ago there was talk about merging the Department of Labor with the Department of Education.
Yes.
Really, really bad idea. Here we are trying to end federal bureaucracy, and they want to merge two of the largest unconstitutional federal agencies. And so, it kind of quieted down after it first came out. We were certainly opposed to that as well, because what that's doing is it's further enforcing this idea that education is about preparing kids for the workforce. College and career ready is the name that you hear touted a lot that replaced Common Core. So, what's happened over several decades, again, an intentional agenda, is the government has attempted to control our economy by predicting what jobs in a particular region of the state will be available, and then pigeonholing children through government schools into training for these jobs. So it's not even about academia anymore. It is this attempt, to control the economy. And so workforce development is the model of education that government schools provide today. And there's not a legislator in the country, I believe, that understands the problems with that. And so Republicans are as guilty as Democrats from the school board, and unfortunately, I think all the way up to the president. And so that's why our organization is working on an educational documentary about this very issue, so that people can begin to understand that workforce development model of education is failing our children, causing them to continue to plummet in scores when they're compared nationally to other students. And really, if you think about Common Core in the early grades, it's really, some of it's even child abuse, what's happening to our children with these faulty standards.
I don't deny that one. I know that here in Florida, our governor, the previous governor, Rick Scott, put down a mandate to get rid of Common Core. Our new governor has decided that there were remnants of Common Core that were left behind. And so Governor DeSantis has said, well, you got the Department of Education for the state of Florida has got 1 year to get rid of all remnants of Common Core. That sounds good, but then what?
Yes. Yeah. Well, we've been following that. It's been a very hot topic among the education advocates in social media. So, first of all, I commend your governor. I think it's awesome. I hope it's not just a political talking point, to gain him some advantage. There are very strong groups in your state, as you know, that are working and have worked to end Common Core. Mm-hmm. And so I pray that they'll have opportunities to provide input in this process. The problem is when you delegate the process to the state agency, the state education agency, that's probably not the best way to make it happen. And in South Carolina, where I live, we actually passed a bill that was supposed to end Common Core, and they were supposed to rewrite the standards. And then the superintendent of education was over that process, and she was a rhino. She was really a Democrat, but ran as a Republican. So we all knew what was going to happen, and it did. And they even did a survey not a survey, but they did a report where they compared the two. They compared the new standards with Common Core, and the Department of Education itself admitted they were 91% aligned with Common Core. So we have Common Core, just under a different name. So we worked hard to get that legislation passed. And, the mistake was to put it in the hands of the bureaucrats and expect that it was going to be any different. So I hope that it's not going to happen that way in Florida. If some of your grassroots activists can get their foot in the door, perhaps that could help.
Let me ask you about testing. We have these intermittent tests in the public school system, I guess, to measure something. Has there been a study, Sheri, where test results, say, in the last 5 years have been compared to those test results of 20 years ago to see on paper what the measurements are and how far apart they may be? In other words, that they would show that we are certainly failing students in recent history as opposed to 20 years ago?
So yeah, I can't think of one right off the top of my head, but I know there's some research out there. And I read a recent article. Actually, it wasn't a recent article, but it was recently posted. It was written in November by Jane Robbins, and it talked about a study that was done on K-12 education that easily proved that Common Core was a total failure. So there is. I don't know that it goes back that far. But there are good studies. There's the NAEP test that's a national test that we take, and we compare ourselves to other countries. And I know on that level, we have dropped and dropped and dropped. You know what? And Cato Institute they have a wonderful chart that shows how much money has increased in education versus academic achievement. And of course, the academic achievement line is flatlined. And of course, the money going into education just soars straight up. So that chart just comes to mind. So it does show that over decades, if nothing else, academic achievement has just stymied. It's not going anywhere.
Is the same true, do you think, then, for the comparison of the score results for SAT and ACTs? I mean, do we seem to have, on those test results for college admittance, that there's been a slow decline in the scoring, say, in recent history as compared to 10 or 20 years ago. My gut tells me that that's necessarily true, but you know, I don't have kids in the system anymore by a long stretch, so I haven't paid much attention to it. But
well, I'm sure you're right, and you know, you probably have seen the old things where the old tests from 8th grade, you know, from back 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And how smart kids were back then.
Yes.
They've definitely been dumbed down. But as far as the SAT and the ACT, you know, it's interesting. I was thinking about this the other day because one of my friends who has a kid in high school was bragging about, and she's in a private school, and so she's bragging about how well she did on the SAT. And so they changed the way they score the SAT.
Yes.
About 10 years ago. So you can't even really compare, because I was going to ask for what her kid made, and then I thought, well, it won't do me any good because it's not even relevant to what my kid made 10 years ago. So first of all, it dawned on me that may have been intentional so that we can't make comparisons. But then the other thing about the SAT and the ACT is that it is now aligned with Common Core. So if you don't go to a Common Core school, learn how to do math and all of that, then you're not going to do well on the SAT or the ACT. But the good news is there are some alternatives. There's at least one that I have knowledge of. So they're starting to, you know, try to break that monopoly on the college entrance exams.
Oh man, this is a bigger domino effect than I ever thought it was. All right, well, here's the other thing that kind of scares me. I have looked at the committee members on the House side for the 116th Congress in this cockamamie Education and Labor Committee. And these names that are on the Democrat side, which are obviously now in the majority by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They got 8 more members on the Democrat side than they have on the Republican side. There are 2 people on there that scare me. The rest of them, I don't even know who they are on the Democrat side at all. And I don't see anything in any of these names, really on both sides, that give me any hope that the Department of Education committee, this Education and Labor Committee, is going to be any different at the end of the 116th Congress than it is at the beginning. That's kind of a scary proposition here, don't you think?
Oh, it's a very scary proposition with the new Democrat-controlled House. You know, we're just going to have to pray really hard and hold our breath for the next 2 years. And what we've decided to do as an organization is to really put our emphasis and energy into parents and taxpayers and local communities and educating them to understand what's happening, because they are the only real solution. Because until people wake up and mount up in armies like they did with Common Core about the federal government intrusion and what's happening in government schools, we're not going to be effective. Like I said, our leadership team a little over a year ago went to Washington, D.C. We developed a blueprint for how to close the Department of Ed, and we were sharing that with conservative legislators and think tanks in D.C. And, you know, some of the ones that we met with that we knew were solid conservatives and thought would be, you know, an easy person to convince, just felt as though, you know, there wasn't the will to do it. There was, you know, so they were by themselves. They couldn't possibly do it on their own, and there was no will. So we've kind of, you know, we've become very discouraged about being able to influence legislation with common sense and research. But what we can do is we can educate their constituents and get them emotionally engaged so that they can either replace them or put enough pressure on them to do the right thing. That's what we feel like has to be the strategy going forward.
Well, I would think you probably got an honest response when they said there's not the will to do it. I think that probably is an honest response, whether we want to hear it or not. But I guess the other piece of this is that the left, the Democrats, are so involved in social issues and social justice issues, yet they don't bring up education, do they?
No, because that's their primary vehicle of those wars. You know, children are just being indoctrinated into these little social justice advocates. Do you know all of the standards beginning in kindergarten include standards that teach young children to become little advocates. They need to advocate for social justice causes. They're beginning them at very young ages into this process.
Don't we need an audit? Has the Department of Education been audited? Hello?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if that's the answer either, but I know we're going to do our best to make everybody understand that, you know, the only way we're going to get good education in this state is to get the government out of it. The driver's seat. Parents have to be in the driver's seat. And if we're going to have government schools, that's fine, but parents need to be the primary voice in the school. And until that changes, we're going to continue to have problems.
Well, I can't argue with that, but maybe I think I might need to go do some homework and see if there's been an inspector general assigned to the Department of Education. And if there has been, when was the last report that came from an inspector general? And I also argue that we need a financial audit. And the audit would generally include things like the block grants and, the school lunch and nutrition programs and, all these other kinds of things. So it'd be kind of that would be an interesting read if there was one out there, you think?
Oh, I do think that'd be interesting. So let me know what you find out.
Well, let's hope that we can get some attention here. All of you over there at USPIE, I'm so gratified that you're continuing to carry the baton on this and not letting up, because it has everything to do with this generation and the next generation. We're already seeing the damage and we're just making it worse and worse and worse. So big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, to Sheri Few for being with us. Thank you, Sheri. And ladies and gentlemen, there's more coming your way, so stay with us.
Hey, Donna, Cowboy Logic radio listeners love law enforcement.
That's right, Don. And Charity Magnets designs and produces beautiful, high-quality products for law enforcement supporters and enthusiasts.
They've got very impressive honor badge car magnets.
CharityMagnets.com.
They've got license plate honor badges.
CharityMagnets.com.
They've got cool keychains and license plate frames.
CharityMagnets.com. I'm on their website right now, and this is my favorite, the Honor Badge dog tag. Look at that little doggy with the dog tag. He's so cute.
Donna, we're trying to do an ad read, and you're playing around on their website, which happens to be CharityMagnets.com.
But he's so cute.
Donna.
Okay. Hey, this is huge, too. For each sale, a donation will be made to Cops for Kids with Cancer. Cops for Kids with Cancer has given more than $2.5 million in donations. Yes.
Become a Blue Honor Foundation member today. Like Donna is doing right now, go to CharityMagnets.com.
But he's so cute. All right, use the promo code MOJO for $5 off any purchase. I know you all love and support our brave law enforcement professionals and their families. Show your support today by going to CharityMagnets.com and check out that little puppy. He's so cute. Hey, Don, can we go to the pound, get another rescue dog, please? Pretty
No,
please?
Donna, no. 5 rescue dogs are enough, but I'm going to CharityMagnets.com, and I'm making some purchases right now.
Become a Blue Honor Foundation member today. Enter MOJO at checkout and get $5 off. CharityMagnets.com.
Let's face it, liberals are offended by everything.
Right on.
And they have zero sense of humor.
Right on.
Huh?
Right on. It's the party game that pokes fun at political correctness and liberalism run amok.
But making fun of them is hilarious for the rest of us.
So play right on and mock the progressive left and their fake news media counterparts in a variety of categories, such as race hustle, the wussification of America, earth snobs, Islam abomination, Hollywood hypocrites, and campus coddling. Feminism follies and rainbow games, and don't forget millennial entitlement and many others.
Right On, created by conservatives for conservatives.
Because mocking the left feels so right on.
Give the gift of all year long by going to rightongame.com.
That's rightongame.com. Use promo code MOJO50 for a 10% discount. That's rightongame.com, promo code MOJO50 for 10% off.
And while you're there, check out the new drinking game option.
Warning, microaggressions contained in this box. Millennials and snowflakes will be offended by its contents. Retreating to safe spaces are highly recommended.
Rightongame.com, promo code MOJO50 for 10% off. Rightongame.com.
You can't handle the truth.
The Denise Simon Experience. The Truth Matrix. Vetting, exposing, drilling down to the truth.
Rolling Thunder, this is Hitman. See ya. Over. Hitman, this is Rolling Thunder. See ya out.
The Denise Simon Experience. Exposing politics, lies, demagoguery, spin, fraud.
Grid to suppress. Mike Charlie, 4 tree 5, 9er 2-1. Grid to mark. Mike Charlie, 4-7 tree 9er, 8-9er. Out.
Promoting individual situational awareness. Question, probe, notice, ask why.
Mark smoke on the deck. 2 rounds HEPT. Gas TOT 5-3.
And now, the Denise Simon Experience.
And thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for hanging with us here on the Denise Simon Experience. I get lots of emails because I subscribe to an awful lot of things, so I can have a fairly wide range of topics that I'm somewhat current on. And I was delighted to get an email that had an article in it that was co-authored by Samantha Mandeles, who was with the Middle East Forum. And she has accepted the offer to be with us on the Denise Simon Experience because we got a topic here that just seems to have fallen off the headlines. And I'm sad about that because we got so many other scandals going on around the globe. And that is CARE, the Council for American Islamic Relations. And Samantha is challenging the premise that because of CARE's activities, which I think have gone somewhat unnoticed, except by just a small handful of people, Samantha being one of them, disqualifies them for their Internal Revenue Service status. And so I absolutely agree with that. So I reached out to Samantha and she's with us. So welcome, Samantha.
Hi, Denise. Thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure.
You know, I don't think we've been paying nearly enough attention to the Islamic groups that are here in the United States recently, and that includes certainly CARE, but ISNA and several others. But I just know in my heart there's some things that are happening. I can't prove it. You're probably closer to it than I am. But I know that there's some activities that are going on that are not in the best interest of laws and Constitution and IRS regulations. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, we've discovered at Middle East Forum, I work for the Islamist Watch Project. So we monitor what we call nonviolent or lawful Islamists, believing that while violent Islamism, that is terrorism, gets the headlines,
Mm-hmm.
that nonviolent Islamism and lawful, relatively lawful Islamism sort of wins hearts and minds. So we're dedicated to looking at Islamist organizations like CARE and exposing kind of their duplicity in subverting American values by using American concepts. So CARE will talk a lot about the importance of freedom of speech and and the vileness of religious bigotry, but then of course, for CARE, freedom of speech for me, but not for thee.
Correct.
And they care much less about religious bigotry than they say they do, as evidenced by their own staff, displaying hatred against Jews, against Christians, against minority Muslim sects. So that's their whole thing. So in terms of the IRS regulations, to be a 501c3, that's a type of nonprofit that is forbidden from interfering or showing bias during political campaigns. So CARE is classified as a 501c3 and is therefore beholden to those rules. But we found that CARE activity, especially in the lead up to the midterm elections, a lot of that political organizing violated those rules. So, it's important to us to expose where CARE is flouting the law, and we're hoping that that the IRS will take notice.
How does the IRS take notice on these kinds of things? Is there need to be some kind of a formal complaint, or do they ask for evidence, or is the Department of Justice required to tap the IRS on the shoulder and say, you need to investigate? I mean, how does it necessarily happen?
Right. So the IRS actually does have a formal complaint system, and they are required by law to acknowledge the receipt of these complaints. So using some of this data that we've gathered, we are lodging formal complaints against CARE as having flouted these 501c3 rules.
Right.
Now, CARE was actually stripped of its 501c3 status before for failing to file tax returns. And in the run-up to the 2016 presidential election, Ben Carson called for CARE to be stripped again of its 501c3 tax-exempt status. It's not clear to me why the IRS didn't follow through on that, because CARE called for Ben Carson, to withdraw from the race, which is a violation of showing bias during campaigns. So we are hoping that this go round with the IRS will yield more success.
Has the evidence been presented to CARE themselves, to the leadership of CARE, such that they have denied or contested the evidence?
So we, it's funny you should ask, because we have been contacting CARE national and CARE local branches. We have a process of being in touch with them every time either their staff, we find evidence that their staff has supported or emitted hate speech themselves, or we find evidence of these violations. So CARE has a distinct habit of ignoring our contacts. So yes, CARE knows about this article, and we alert CARE every time their staff members are shown to be associating with homophobes or publishing things that are inappropriate and hateful. CARE doesn't respond generally. So they know it. They know that we are, watching.
Are they required for public disclosure forms of any sort under a 501c3 status?
Yes. So 501c3 organizations are required to disclose all kinds of information to the public. So there are 990 forms that shows, who donated, how much the donations were. Those are all required to be disclosed. And if you look on sites like Charity Navigator or GuideStar, organizations have, submitted those forms. So CARE has submitted some of those, but not all of them. And, in 2007 through 2010, that was their problem when they didn't file their tax returns. Through those years, those are required to be open for public inspection, and that was the reason for losing their tax exempt status at that time. They reclaimed it later.
And they reclaimed it later how?
I gather that a nonprofit has a nonprofit does have a certain amount of time if they lose their tax exempt status to resubmit their application with the IRS and the paperwork in question. So CARE was able to regain that status by submitting their applications for 501c3 status, showing that here is their documentation. So after losing their tax exempt status for failing to do that, they I guess sort of learned their lesson in a way and regained it. But that's a different issue than flouting the rules that forbid being what the IRS calls an action organization, and defines that by saying, listen, you are forbidden as a 501c3 from basically showing bias toward one candidate or a group of candidates during a campaign, which CARE has absolutely done, as we have found in our research.
Yeah. And so if they stay out of, if they actually toe the line on the stipulations of being a 501c3, then what is the true function of CARE or ISNA or Muslim Students or any of the others? Are they just some kind of a social Islamic network across the United States?
Well, that's an interesting question. These sort of large Islamist organizations like CARE, the Islamic Society of North America, ISNA, as you mentioned, the Islamic Circle of North America, the Muslim American Society, MAS. So, they all sort of have slightly different purviews. CARE fashions itself kind of as a Muslim NAACP and a civil rights and advocacy organization. We've found in sort of watching CARE and researching that that's really not what they do, and their focus is very selective. They sort of support Islamist ideology by co-opting progressive narratives. So what I mean by that is that they, for instance, they're supporting the demands of the Somali Muslim community in Minnesota against Amazon, and sort of pushing for Amazon to allow more and more leeway, more prayer breaks, more more accommodations for its Muslim employees. And certainly a company should, reasonably accommodate employees of all religions, whether a person needs to have the day off for Christmas, for Yom Kippur, for Ramadan, sure. But, there's a sort of limit where, if you choose to work at a place, you choose to work and live in American society, you can't always expect society to bend to you. you must bend to society. And
especially when, certain holidays are national. They have been, by the government, they've been declared national holidays.
Right. And it's perfectly reasonable, in my view, for a Muslim to say, listen, this is Ramadan or Eid al-Fitr, is a day that I'm not going to work. And I'm going to take a vacation day. And that's perfectly reasonable. As a Jew, I take a vacation day on Yom Kippur so that I can go to synagogue. And I think, it's reasonable that that's my right. However, what's not reasonable is that Muslim employees should be given more leeway than employees of other religions. And in a large part, in this particular example, that's being pushed for. So CARE has the function of holding other people to a standard that it does not expect from its own staff and its own community. I'll give you another example. CARE Florida Communications Director Wilfredo Amar Ruiz recently demanded the resignation of a Florida City Commissioner, Lima Taub, because she made what CARE classifies as Islamophobic statements on social media. Now, I wrote an article earlier this year exposing Ruiz himself for writing an article in Spanish that essentially promotes, classical anti-Semitic motifs, and quotes from one of the texts that inspired, classic European anti-Semitism in the 1800s. This is really nasty stuff. And he's quoting it as if it's legitimate. So, if somebody had done the same, when somebody does the same, but their ire is directed towards Muslims, Ruiz speaks out, demands their resignation, demands public shaming. But when he himself does it, or when his director, Hassan Shibli, endorses a group who says that Ahmadiyya Muslims should be killed because they're apostates, that's fine. CARE has no problem with that. And it's coming from their own staff. So their function is to legitimize bigotry against others or ignore it, and then shame society, shame people for what they call Islamophobia. And some of that is real and some of that is not.
What is CARE's connective tissue to other international organizations? And, we certainly know the Muslim Brotherhood, but, we've got Turkey, we've got Qatar, that, something tells me that, there's some other kinds of fundings that may be coming internationally that may be in violation of 501c3. Would that be right?
It's hard to know. It's hard to know about the violations of 501c3 in terms of the funding, and CARE should be more transparent about it. They certainly have connections, and they nourish connections with oppressive regimes such as Qatar, such as Turkey, such as Iran, and they, so we'll see on CARE's website press releases talking about how the executive director Nihad Awad, has gone to Doha and met with the emir, or meets with Iranian President Rouhani or Turkish dictator Erdogan, and then CARE participates in events like the annual Muslim American Society Islamic Circle of North America, Mass ICNA convention, that's openly co-sponsored by American arms of the Turkish religious affairs and Turkish government. So that conference, in which CARE has a big part, was for years co-sponsored by Turkish Airlines. It's co-sponsored by the Zakat Foundation of America, which is a Turkish-backed, another Turkish-backed nonprofit. It's involved the Diyanet Center, which was built in Maryland and is basically an outpost of the Turkish Diyanet Religious Affairs Directorate. They're involved. And then, of course, as Middle East Forum talked about at our Qatar the Menace conference on Wednesday, CARE also has a lot of connections with Qatari-owned media conglomerate Al Jazeera. And Al Jazeera and CARE and these other organizations sort of mimic one another's work. They mimic this, they use sort of the same, in English, they use the same language of civil rights and progressivism.
Right.
Kind of dupe people into, believing that they're a benevolent force, or in Al Jazeera's case, that they're an unbiased, free press. So there are definite personal connections and very likely funding connections.
A lot of attention has been diverted now, certainly with Russia and China. And so we still have, these underlying issues. And I'm very, very happy that, you were able to join us and talk about this. I hope you keep beating this drum in a big way. There's some opportunities for this administration to put out some call to actions with some activities that are happening here in the United States that I would say just go unreported, except for, people like you, because there's too many other crises, I would say, that are happening. But thanks for staying with it. We certainly appreciate you being on the Denise Simon Experience. Very good work. And thanks for that huge explanation. That's insightful and comprehensive. So, Samantha, thanks so much for being with us on the Denise Simon Experience. And ladies and gentlemen, we got more coming your way. So stay with us.
This is Don Newen with Cowboy Logic Radio, and I carry my Sig Sauer 9mm every day. It's like a MasterCard. I never leave home without it.
And I'm glad you do, given that you work in Atlanta every day, talking about a rough place to work.
Well, Donna, I would say that most of our beloved Cowboy Logic Radio listeners not only own, but carry their weapons, too. It's just the thing to do nowadays.
So do I, Don. And we need to share with our listeners a fantastic weapons company, Tar River Arms. Oh, and I should mention, they were founded by United States Marine, enough said, right? Badass-o-matic.
TarRiverArms.com. That's TAR Riverarms.com.
Tar River Arms, America's first virtual gun store, makes it easier and more comfortable than ever to purchase your firearm online. And through 3D interactive experiences, you can even view and inspect that gun you're purchasing.
They even have weekly specials that eliminate shipping and broker fees, Donna. Great guns, great prices, and great service. And remember, Tar River Arms is veteran-owned and operated.
Don, would you expect anything less from a Marine?
No, ma'am.
At TarRiverArms.com, you can search by caliber, manufacturer, and firearm types. Revolvers, semi-automatic pistols, including your SIG, Don, short-barrel rifles, long rifles, shotguns, and NFA silencers. They even have very hard-to-find products such as the H&K MP5. Totally badass.
Tar River Arms have some of the coolest high-end tactical weapons made, all at great prices.
TarRiverArms.com, U.S. Marine owned and operated.
Hoorah!
My dad, James Henry, was an Air Force special operator. He died in 2005 in Albania.
I lost my husband, Captain Chuck Cooper, February 21st, 1991, in Iraq.
The Special Operations Warrior Foundation has made a covenant with us special operators. If you're serving in Army, Navy, Air Force, or Marine Corps Special Operation Forces, and you lose your life in the line of duty, the Foundation will ensure funding is provided for college education for your surviving children.
The education that the Special Operations Warrior Foundation provides is a gift. This education is something that my father would have wanted. Thanks to the foundation, I am now able to attend the university of my choice.
My children lost their father when they were 2 and 3, and in turn, they received an extended family with the Special Operations Warrior Foundation. The foundation has never missed a birthday, a Christmas, or a graduation. What this has meant to me is that my children have always been taken care of. For the foundation to honor my husband by providing a college education for our children means the world to me.
What makes the Special Operations Warrior Foundation different from other military charities is that we proactively reach out to every one of our families and stay in touch with them over the years.
I would like to thank the supporters for all their generosity. Because of them, my children and all the other children and spouses of fallen servicemen know that they are not alone.
I would also like to say a special thank you to all of you who support the Special Operations Warrior Foundation. What you've done for me is absolutely incredible, and I can never repay you.
Our country's bravest have sacrificed so much. We feel that the least we can do is make sure their families are taken care of and that their loved ones are never forgotten.
Let's face it, liberals are offended by everything.
Right on.
And they have zero sense of humor.
Right on.
Huh?
Right on. It's the party game that pokes fun at political correctness and liberalism run amok.
But making fun of them is hilarious for the rest of us.
So play right on and mock the progressive left and their fake news media counterparts in a variety of categories, such as race hustle, the wussification of America, earth snobs, Islam abomination, Hollywood hypocrites, and campus coddling. Feminism follies and rainbow games, and don't forget, millennial entitlement and many others.
Right on, created by conservatives for conservatives.
Because mocking the left feels so right on.
Give the gift of all year long by going to RightOnGame.com.
That's RightOnGame.com. Use promo code MOJO50 for a 10% discount. That's RightOnGame.com, promo code MOJO50 for 10% off.
And while you're there, check out the new drinking game option.
Warning, microaggressions contained in this box. Millennials and snowflakes will be offended by its contents. Retreating to safe spaces are highly recommended.
RightOnGame.com, promo code MOJO50 for 10% off. RightOnGame.com.
You can't handle the truth.
The Denise Simon Experience. The Truth Matrix. Vetting, exposing, drilling down to the truth.
Rolling Thunder, this is Hitman. Seat over. Hitman, this is Rolling Thunder. Seat out.
The Denise Simon Experience. Exposing politics, lies, demagoguery, spin, fraud.
Grid to suppress. Mike Charlie 435 921. Grid to mark. Mike Charlie 47 tree 9er 89er out.
Promoting individual situational awareness. Question, probe, notice, ask why.
Mark smoke on the deck. 2 rounds HEVT. Gas TOT 53.
And now, the Denise Simon Experience.
And thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us on the Denise Simon Experience. Stacey Abrams. You may have heard her name because she was running for governor of Georgia and lost that race with all kinds of endorsements. Oprah Winfrey, Barack Obama. I mean, it went on and on and on. And so, Rachel Guidice at Daily Signal wrote a good summary on Stacey Abrams because I think Senator Schumer tapped her to give the State of the Union rebuttal to whatever it is that Trump said. Did I get that right, Stacey? I mean, Rachel?
Yes, you are right. She'll be giving the rebuttal tonight to the State of the Union address. And if people look at her history and her background, we can just see that she is very much someone that the Democrat Party is wanting to elevate as someone who really touts their ideals. She said she's okay with non-citizens voting. She wants to turn the state of Georgia blue. She said so openly in interviews. So this is someone who's, interesting enough, not even holding public office right now, but yet the Democrats are wanting to put her forth as someone that they see as a leader who could, bring the country and especially the state of Georgia to a very, blue kind of a state.
I'm glad you said that because I think so much of the attention has gone to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And I would say be careful now because you're going to get sideswiped because I truly believe that the liberals, the Democrats, are pushing Stacey Abrams because she's truly a social justice warrior, right?
She is, and I think they have plans for her. They want her. And this is not a secret. I've heard and seen people talking about this on social media and on various news outlets. They want to groom her to run for the Senate in 2020. So they're strategically placing her on, in the public eye, even though she's not currently in office. She's definitely very pro-Democrat social issues, the LGBTQ agenda, and she's been endorsed by Planned Parenthood. And they haven't not been quiet either about their support of her. They said that voting for Stacey Abrams is a chance to make U.S. history. So she's very much in that crowd of social justice and Planned Parenthood rights.
Isn't it fascinating that we never seem to hear the left or the Democrats talk about any kind of issues other than social issues or health care? And when it comes to health care, Rachel, they keep saying that health care is a right and it's unaffordable and that we need to make it affordable, including prescription drugs. Yet, only Democrats voted for the quote-unquote Affordable Health Care Act. And Obama told us that we were all going to save money. So this isn't Trump care. Even because it wasn't repealed because of John McCain, it's really back to Pelosi care now here at this point, right?
You're right. And what's interesting is she even said in October that she doesn't think the free markets essentially have a place in fixing and being the solution to rising healthcare costs and the limited insurance options that people are seeing with Obamacare. We all know people who have had to change plans or have lost their doctor because of Obamacare. And even Kamala Harris said, I think it was about a week ago during an interview with CNN, that, she wants to do away with private health care completely. And that, even if you like your doctor, she's like, why, people might not be able to keep their doctor. If they want to have health care, they might just have to go along with what the system would provide rather than what they've already been established with and comfortable with. So you're right. They have very much an agenda in pushing Stacey Abrams, and they're saying through her that we don't see a solution to any of these problems in the private market and the free market.
And Kamala Harris is doing the same thing. So, you can go seek health care today, and chances are of you seeing a real doctor, certainly a board certified doctor, is getting slimmer as the weeks go by, correct? And so why are we not challenging little Miss Stacey, Kamala Harris, and the rest of them that, 9 times out of 10, you're not even seeing a board certified doctor anymore?
Yeah, a lot of new people are, they've lost their insurance that they like. They've lost, in some cases, their doctor. And if Kamala Harris has her way, she's going to be, putting forth a system where, where she has described herself, where, people, why get caught up in, waiting. And I was talking to a colleague about this, and they were saying, and I totally agree, where, the government isn't going to make you wait either. Like, if we have a complete government provided and supported healthcare system, I don't know how she's going off saying that there won't be any red tape with that, because we have enough red tape going to the post office, and sometimes having to put up with waits there, let alone our own healthcare system.
So how long has Stacey, there was a lot of money spent on Stacey Abrams' race in Georgia. And as a consequence, she lost. And she really never truly conceded that I saw. And so it looks like the Democrats are still pouring money into her guidance, into her mentoring, in order to continue to elevate her status. Is that right?
Yeah, and folks I've talked to here in D.C. on the Hill and elsewhere, they see her as a rising star for the Democrats. She is a minority. She's a woman. And I think, with her, it appears, it could seem that they're almost using her to kind of push identity politics. And they see her, well, she's not serving in any public office right now, but they see her as someone who fits their bill. So they're going to fund her. They're going to place her strategically in places that they think will, be in, right in front of the American public's eyes, so that, she'll be, ever present and kind of right in front of them. But we saw, she did lose the governor's race. We don't know what's going to happen in 2020, but as we all know, right now, Georgia necessarily isn't a blue state. So unless she is extremely successful in peddling herself and kind of maybe dialing back how extreme she is on some issues, like she thinks, assault AR-15 should be banned, those types of issues. If she's able to dial that back, I don't know. Who knows what will happen? But they're definitely using her as almost a pawn of the Democrat Party to strategically place her. And it looks like they're going to be putting her up for a Senate run. So nothing's been officially announced yet. We'll have to wait and see. But this is what it's looking like it's shaping up to be.
Rachel, in your travels, we are having this whole non-citizen voting thing that has bubbled to the surface, and there's just but a handful of people that are really in shock about it and are stomping their feet. But I don't think there's enough. And Stacey Abrams is not opposed to non-citizens voting. Why are we not fighting back on this one and saying, the most sacrosanct right or privilege that we have given to us at the state level is voting? And we're not seemingly to shame these people enough to go put them in their corner and make them stay there.
Yeah, that is the whole, I think that's the whole strategy of the Democrat Party. They want non-citizens and illegal immigrants to be voting so that they can win elections in places heavily populated by non-citizens. And, a lot of those are states along the border like California and Georgia, I think, could be counted among them. And even, New Mexico, Arizona, that's where a lot of those folks end up. And I think their strategy as well, if we can kind of put these people under the radar, allow them to vote. I had a friend, she used to work on the Hill, and now she's in a different private organization, but she said that her home state of Georgia, for the governor's election, she told me that they kept the polls open longer in communities where there were people like non-citizens and minorities, so that they would be able to vote, whereas other communities that didn't have as high a population, those closed at the normal time. And she said, that was reported a little bit, but by and large it flew under the radar. And I think we're naive to not realize that this is the strategy of the Democrat Party. They want to be able to have things like this happen so that people who shouldn't be voting still vote and then elect candidates put up by the Democrats.
I kind of take issue with the fact that, they get additional voters from non-citizens voting, because I think they already have them. We've got probably, I think I did a count a couple of months ago that we've got 32 districts across the United States that have a congressperson that's really representing essentially a district that is the majority of non-citizens or illegals. So they already have that. Is there some other thing other than just trying to gain more votes that you're aware of?
I think they're trying to build their base, honestly. I think they're trying to, again, like we've mentioned, elect people that they're putting up to serve in Congress and other elected positions. And I think that, again, we are naive to not realize this is what they're doing. I know people if they're curious about this work and want to know more, go to the Heritage website and follow what the Heritage Foundation and our legal experts are working on for this case. They're tracking this, and every time a new instance comes up in a part of the country where it's reported and even proved that there are non-citizens voting, they look into that and they track that, and they post the details on heritage.org. So anyone who's interested, I would encourage you to look there because we have experts following that. But again, we're naive to think that this isn't something that they're using. And they're slowly growing their base by this. And I think the more it flies under the radar, the greater in trouble the country will be, because we're going to be allowing people to participate in our electoral process when they haven't been actually admitted to the process to participate. We want them to, it's just we want them to do it legally.
Planned Parenthood. I would say the conservatives and the Republicans have truly dropped the ball when it comes to Planned Parenthood. And Planned Parenthood has wrapped their arms completely around Stacey Abrams. Rachel, help us out here. I mean, why are we losing on this front too?
Well, I mean, again, she is Planned Parenthood's candidate, and in May before the election, Planned Parenthood Action, which is basically the campaigning arm of Planned Parenthood, they released this, it was kind of a blog statement. They called her a fierce advocate for health and reproductive rights, which is essentially code for she supports abortion without, apology. She wants, they essentially are placing her and supporting her so that she'll be able to basically work for Planned Parenthood's goals, and they've called her the leader that we need. She'll protect the health and rights of all Georgians, and I think people need to see that, abortion, what Planned Parenthood is all about. They're not about protecting health or rights. They're just about expanding abortion, and we've even seen, sadly, in New York and Virginia very recently, Planned Parenthood pushing for abortion up to the very moment of birth, and even if there's a botched abortion, they think that it's awesome that New York passed their abortion up to birth bill and wanted Virginia to do the same. So Planned Parenthood is not about women's rights or health. They're just about expanding abortion rights, and they're unequivocally saying without apology that, Stacey Abrams is their candidate. So Georgians will get more of the same and worse if they do elect Stacey Abrams.
What is Stacey Abrams' anchor to Georgia? I mean, is there a possibility that the Democrats will go, we don't know that we're going to necessarily be able to move Georgia to a blue state, so they may advance her to another state where there's a bigger chance? I mean, does she have some tie truly to Georgia that she would never leave it, or is she some kind of a sacrificial lamb by the Democrats that she's not aware of?
I think that remains to be seen. I think her run for governor of Georgia, even though it wasn't successful, I think she's using that as, I'm a Georgian, I'm working to help the people of Georgia, I'm committed, even though I lost the first time, I'm going to try again. So I think they're using that kind of as their main anchor. And I think if she would lose, if she does, potentially run for the Senate in Georgia and loses, then they might move her on to a different state, maybe California, New York, where it's definitely more blue, and maybe she would see a win there. But I think they're using her run for governor of Georgia, even though it wasn't successful, kind of like as their boost to see if they can get her in the Senate representing Georgia.
Yeah, they kind of created a lane for her, and I think with this lane that they created for her, they're going to see how far they can get with her. I think she's easily dismissible because she lost, but I don't think enough attention was brought to the left, certainly with Obama and Oprah Winfrey. That is this really who you want? I mean, who's running this Democrat Party? Everybody says it's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I'm not so sure. Are you?
I mean, they're definitely using both of these people to further their base, and
they're trial balloons.
Oh yeah, I mean, AOC is definitely younger than Stacey Abrams, but by and large, I mean, Stacey Abrams is younger than some of the older, talking heads of the Democrat Party, like Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. So, comparative to them, she's young. So I think they see potential in her because she's not, at the age of a Nancy Pelosi or a Chuck Schumer, and they see a future there.
Are there any other social gender and social issues that we need to be aware of that we might get blindsided with that Stacey might be carrying the baton for?
Honestly, I think the biggest social issues we've talked about are the ones that we should be most concerned about. Her pro-abortion, pro-gender equality agenda, which could, essentially harm other people's religious freedoms if what the Democrats are trying to get through, especially with her and others in the Senate, in the House, to happen. Her also, we mentioned this very briefly, but she's anti-gun. She's very pro-gun control. And I think if she were to be elected, she would work to restrict Georgian Second Amendment rights in that sphere. And we mentioned Planned Parenthood. And who knows, with what we've seen happen just recently in New York with them legalizing abortion up to birth and them trying to do that in Virginia this past week. We could see something like that happening in Georgia because they would see an ally on their side if she is elected to the Senate. So I think those issues are the biggest. I'm sure more will come to the surface, but I think those three: gender equality, Planned Parenthood, and abortion rights, and the whole gun control and healthcare debate too that we talked about. Those are the big issues because those are honestly things that Trump has ran on and won and is working to address while he's in the White House. So,
is there Rachel? Is there some memo that's floating around Washington D.C. with these lists of people that Stacey Abrams would even come up on Chuck Schumer's radar for him to nominate her to give the State of the Union rebuttal? There's got to be a list of these operatives that CNN and MSNBC, the DNC, the DCCC, the Congressional Black Caucus. They're all talking on the same words and the same issues. And I think there's a list of the issues, and then there's a list of these people. I challenge you to go run up and down the hill and see if you can't get that piece of paper. It's got to be happening.
I think it is happening, and I also think too, they want to keep Stacey Abrams in front of the American eye. And there are folks serving in Congress that are, doing TV interviews and talking on a regular basis. They want to kind of refresh, Americans, vision and view of her. And I think that's why they're doing this, to kind of like reintroduce her to the public eye, so that when she, starts to, when she starts preparing to run maybe towards the middle or end of this year and, then runs in 2020, America won't have forgotten her, and they'll be like, oh yeah, she's, been a talking head for Democrats, even though she wasn't in office. So that's what it seems like here. But
what's her position with law enforcement? That's one that we haven't covered.
I know she's anti-gun control. I haven't seen anything of late, personally, that I've seen of her either, being unsupportive of law enforcement or challenging anything that they've,
climate change.
Yeah. But I think given her stance on pro-gun control, I think we should take note and watch to see what she does say when asked about law enforcement, because I wouldn't be surprised if she tends to lean with the Democrats on that issue, even though I haven't seen anything of late her talking about that.
Well, Rachel, we certainly appreciate your time on Stacey, because I think you're absolutely right. And I think the Democrats are using her, exploiting her, and they would easily dismiss her if she screws up, because there's so many just like her on this short list that I still challenge you to go into some Democrat's office and steal off the desk. I know it's got to be out there somewhere.
We know it. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, very well done. And ladies and gentlemen, there's more coming your way, so make sure that you stay with us.
This is Don Newen with Cowboy Logic Radio, and I carry my Sig Sauer 9mm every day It's like a MasterCard. I never leave home without it.
And I'm glad you do, given that you work in Atlanta every day, talking about a rough place to work.
Well, Donna, I would say that most of our beloved Cowboy Logic radio listeners not only own, but carry their weapons too. It's just the thing to do nowadays.
So do I, Don. And we need to share with our listeners a fantastic weapons company, Tar River Arms. Oh, and I should mention, they were founded by United States Marine, enough said, right? Badass-o-matic.
TarRiverArms.com. That's TAR Riverarms.com.
Tar River Arms, America's first virtual gun store, makes it easier and more comfortable than ever to purchase your firearm online. And through 3D interactive experiences, you can even view and inspect that gun you're purchasing.
They even have weekly specials that eliminate shipping and broker fees, Donna. Great guns, great prices, and great service. And remember, Tar River Arms is veteran-owned and operated.
Don, would you expect anything less from a Marine?
No, ma'am.
At TarRiverArms.com, you can search by caliber, manufacturer, and firearm types. Revolvers, semi-automatic pistols, including your SIG, Don, short-barrel rifles, long rifles, shotguns, and NFA silencers. They even have very hard-to-find products such as the H&K MP5. Totally badass.
Tar River Arms have some of the coolest high-end tactical weapons made, all at great prices.
TarRiverArms.com, U.S. Marine owned and operated.
Hoorah!
Something terrible is happening.
Something terrible is happening.
Something terrible is happening.
Something terrible is happening.
And at times like this, we need Hollywood celebrities to tell us what to do.
And how to think.
As more and more celebrities become experts on healthcare,
we need to remember who the real victim is.
Big government.
People are saying a lot of mean things about big government and calling it socialism. And it's gotta stop.
Ask yourself, where would our country be without big government?
Let's not forget that big government invented all of the greatest things, like college football, microwave ovens, and pants.
So why are people so upset about the idea of big government running our healthcare?
We need to let big government run our healthcare. Just like the post office, the IRS, and the DMV.
If you're not a multi-million-dollar Hollywood star, just think of the last time you went to the DMV.
Remember the short lines?
The cleanliness, efficiency, and order?
Remember the friendly service?
Imagine going to the doctor, DMV style.
Big government style.
When your child needs surgery, is it really a time for hasty decisions?
Of course not.
With big government in charge, you'll have a few months to think it over.
Emergency surgery? No thanks. Emergencies are too scary.
Put my Bobby on a waiting list.
Private healthcare? Please.
Make my own healthcare decisions? Why?
Big government is smarter than me.
Smarter than you.
43% of Americans support DMV-style healthcare.
And that's a clear majority. This year, big government approved $787 billion in lots of essential things.
Things like prepackaged ham.
And voicemail for the homeless.
And a giant inflatable alligator in Cleburne, Texas.
Things that we just can't live without.
Big government.
Is there anything they can't do?
Going to the doctor, DMV style? Count me in.